Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining. I'm starting a new flow series for beginners, and in this series we will look at a use case, a hypothetical company, and how we can apply different types of flow for different use cases, and we will build upon those use cases as we proceed. So first, let's take a look at who this video is for. Anybody who is Salesforce admin, even developers and architect, and if you're just looking to understand how to use flows and where to use flows and what are flows capable of, it's a good video for you. I do have another series on flow for like different elements and explaining those, so please check that out as well if you're not familiar with elements. I will go through those as we discuss the use cases and build the flows. I will try to explain the different elements as well as we go along. So why do you need to learn about flow and why should you care? In my experience, at least, I've seen almost 95% business use cases can be solved using flows, and they can be different types of flows. They can include automations, user interface guidance to end users, etc. So these are the key requirements that we get around automations, as well as guiding the users to go through certain use cases. And you can even combine flows with Apex and Lightning components to make them even more powerful. So that's really working admins and developers together and can solve a lot of complex use cases. And also Salesforce is putting a lot of efforts and enhancements with every release on flows. Even last release, there were some great enhancements with flows. So this is a great time to learn flows. There haven't been any new enhancements on workflows and process builders, and also a great time to start thinking about upgrading those workflows and processes onto the flows. Now let's understand the background use case. IT Pro Company is a company that sells hardware, software, and office furniture to corporations to help their employees work from home. And I will be setting up the products and price books, which I already did in my environment. If you are looking to follow along, I will share a link with you so you can go in your brand new org and set up the products, the price books, and different fields that will be needed throughout this tutorial. So if you want to follow along, which I highly encourage, especially if you're looking for a step-by-step guide and how to apply different use cases to the flow, I highly encourage you to follow along. So go ahead and set up your org, sign up for a brand new Salesforce org, and you can follow along. Now let's look at what are the different problems that the business is facing and why they are trying to solve them. So as we already discussed, there are multiple teams that work together closing a deal and providing the service. You've got the marketing team, which brings in the leads. Then you have sales teams that actually closes the deals, creates the opportunities, and adds those products to the opportunities and create contracts and so on. And if this is completely brand new to you, this is how standard sales cycle work. You have the marketing cycle or marketing team, then you've got the sales, and there will be a lot of different things happening within the sales, from anywhere from moving the opportunity stages, adding the products, and so on. And then in this case, we also have different teams that handle software or hardware. For example, if it's a software product, maybe it goes to a different team where they install the software in those employees' devices, or if it's a hardware, they may have to contact the shipping team to ship the hardware or office furniture in this case. So it helps to understand what the background of the company is, so you can put yourself in those shoes of those sales and try to help them solve the problems. And so here are the major complaints from VP of sales. A lot of VPs of sales and any other department for that matter are very interested in data and reporting and analytics and forecasting as well. So in this case, major complaint is that they don't trust the data coming out of Salesforce. And because they don't feel that the reps are always entering the latest information in Salesforce, there may be a reason for that, which is why the reporting is inaccurate. They cannot report on how many customers do we have, what are the different sales that we're doing, what's the revenue we are generating. There's also difficulty in forecasting, and this is really huge for VP of sales because they rely on this reporting to be able to announce what's the revenue they're going to make in Q4, for example, or what's the revenue next year. So this is very important for higher level people in sales. Also, they don't understand how the customer base is growing and how to divide the accounts. So who should own particular accounts and how should they compensate those sales reps. So there's a lot of confusion around that. And of course, we're not going to be solving all these different problems using flows, but just understand these are the very real use cases that you may run into as you're working through Salesforce use cases. And then there are complaints from reps as well, right? The reason they're not entering the data in Salesforce is because it's very complex to use, and they're not Salesforce admins like us. So it needs to be really easy for them so they can They can enter the information. They need a system that guides them for where the information is needed, maybe validation rules or flows and things like that to guide them through different stages. And the data entry is manual. So we have to try to automate things that is possible. Of course, we cannot automate everything, but if there is a possibility to automate certain things, we obviously have to do that, because manual entry, as we know, may cause a lot of issues, bad data, and the sales rep just may not enter because, again, their main job is selling. And as we discussed, there are multiple teams, and there doesn't seem to be like a streamlined way to communicate with those teams. You have a deal, you create an opportunity, and let's say the customer in this case wants both hardware and software. They want a computer, they want a keyboard, and they also want to install Microsoft 365 in that computer. Now, this is two different products. And so in this case, the sales rep has to manually reach out to the software team. Hey, this person needs these many softwares. Can you assign this to them? And then they also have to reach out to the hardware team to do the shipping. So, and the only way to do that is through Teams or through emails. But there is no concise way to do that. Like Salesforce should be automatically able to notify them whenever that's done. So once the deal is closed, sales rep don't have to worry about that. And that will save a lot of time back and forth. So understanding this use case will really help you, again, build these different automations in Salesforce, which is why I'm going through this. And then there's the data issue as a whole. So if an account is created, how do we make sure that the account has the right data? It has the right state and country and all those different data points that will help the VP of sales to identify which sales rep to assign those accounts to. And a lot of times you have somebody handling all the New York accounts and somebody's handling all the West Coast accounts and so on. But if the account information is not correct, we cannot do that. So again, another use case where we can use the automations in system and different processes in place to be able to understand that. I also have created a Lucidchart just to show you the flow. And if you're very unfamiliar with this, we're going to go through this step by step. So in this case, leads come in. This is the lead marketing, kind of the swim lane, right? So you have the lead coming in. If the lead is true and valid, of course, this person will do some assessment and make sure that the lead is not a bad lead. They will convert that lead to account, contact, and potentially opportunities. And so in this point, you created an account. We don't know if the data is valid. So there has to be something that goes out to a team dedicated for data validation. So in this case, we can send out some sort of alert to a data team that will make sure the account is validated. And if the data is incomplete, they will make sure to populate those accounts. Very high level. Then the opportunity is created, and somehow opportunity gets assigned to different sales reps so that they can start working on it, right? So this is the sales swim lane. And I'm keeping it very simple and high level. So the sales rep adds close date, when do you need the products by, all the different fields needed an opportunity. You have to go through, of course, a very discovery session to figure out what are the different attributes that they want to calculate and capture. And there is opportunity products that we discussed, software and hardware, and maybe office furniture. So they can add those products to it. And that's where, once they add software product or hardware products, something needs to happen in Salesforce to then assign those things to the right people so they can start working on it. And case is probably a good way to use this because we can use the standard queues management. So maybe there's a software team and there's a hardware team. We can assign the cases to the software team, software queue, and hardware queue. So I'll also go over how you can set up the queue here. So in this case, now sales rep don't need to, manually reach out to people. Hey, you have this case coming and whatnot. It will automatically be created, and we can do that using a flow. And I'll go over how we can do that. And once that's done, you have software installation, hardware shipment. The deal is pretty much done here. And there can be another swim lane for like billing, which we're gonna not get into for this tutorial. So just very high level introduction of what we are looking to do here. I hope that makes sense. This diagram makes sense to you. So here is the list of instructions that I mentioned. You can create a brand new org by going to this link And then all you need to do is add some pick list values to product family. I'm adding hardware and software, but you can get creative here. Feel free to add other products as needed, or maybe you have a different company altogether. And then I'm also adding some products, making sure all the active checkbox is true. Just add some random products here. I just got keyboard, laptop, just a standard products with the different product families. That's important. And I've also got some product code here. And then you can add all these products to the standard price book. Now, unless you add the products to the price book, you can't really add it to the opportunity. So you have to make sure that these products are added to the price book. You can go to the price book and start adding them, or you can do the reverse as well. And in this case, I'm using a case object. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to use case object. You can also use a task to notify these other teams, because task now also supports queue. So you can very easily apply the same concept to creating a task for when the case or when the products are added to notify those other teams so they can work on their tasks. And let me show you the queue that I built out. So I have got tech support queue. I've got a data queue, which we'll talk about in a second. I've got hardware shipment and software installation. And it really depends on your use case. Basically, the idea is once the cases are created, I'm going to assign them to this queue. So whoever is in that queue can take those cases and start working on it and then close the case. Then somebody will get notified after that, maybe the billing or invoicing team, so that they can get invoiced on it. Okay, so that's all about the queues. Now let's start working through our list of problems by using flows. And what I'm going to try to do is also walk you through my thought process and how I'm coming up with these scenarios and how do I know which flows to use. So I'm going to try to explain my thought process behind this, so you as an admin can also go through that. Maybe your use cases are different. The idea here is to learn the thought process and not just copying what you see here. So case number 1 here is we're saying there's a lot of data issue. The data is not correct. We cannot trust the data. And as we discussed in the swim lane here, anytime an account is created, we want somebody to get notified and create a validation task so that they can validate the account and make sure all the data in that account is accurate. And how do they know what data to enter? And there are a lot of tools behind this. That is not the topic of this video, but you can use something like DNB to improve the account data, or maybe they can manually look it up, the customer information, and populate it. So it really depends on what your company already has in terms of what to use here, or you can also recommend different approach there. So since this video is about flow, we are going to start building our first flow here. That is on how to inform the account data team to look at the accounts that were created and correct them if needed. See you on the next video.